there are no other questions or comments, I'm about to share my screen and go into the last portion. Sorry. Here we are. So we left off on focus on the people, but let's come back to, let's come back with, we left off of here. Manage fear and speak with confidence. Engage in relaxation techniques. Remember that you will always, more than likely, you will always have some nervousness, and that's good. I think that that's a good thing. It keeps you humble. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being humble doesn't necessarily mean that you are fearful. Wanting to do a good job is a good thing, and trying to and wanting to make sure that you communicate effectively is a good thing. It can sometimes manifest itself or feel like nervousness. Those are some other words that sometimes get used interchangeably. And so you want to, that's why I crossed out the word overcome and put manage, because you want to manage it, right? So you want to engage in relaxation techniques. That's something as simple as closing your eyes, whether you're standing or sitting with your feet flat on the floor, sitting erect, and taking deep breaths. Just doing that for a few minutes is very helpful, and it will relax you. It actually stimulates what they call the vagus nerve, and that helps you. It's very healthy, which is why people who meditate or do yoga or other types of mindfulness, you might hear that. Those are people, they always seem kind of even keel, just good, right in a good place all the time. They do things like this. So engaging in relaxation techniques, becoming aware of your breathing, practice visualization. Visualize yourself standing in front of your audience, and that you are giving a good presentation and that people are enjoying it. Or think about your happy place and look out on your audience, however big or small, and seeing your happy place, wherever that might be. Focus on friendly faces. Remember, sometimes you are going to have people who look like they're paying attention and enjoying what it is that you're saying, and are ready to receive. And then you're going to have some folks in the audience who may intentionally just be giving you an attitude or giving you a face that's not very friendly. And could be a number of reasons for that. Your goal is to not be focused on that, but just you don't spend your time and your energy focusing on those people. You want to watch your food and beverage intake, right? So you don't want to overly consume caffeine or any caffeinated beverages. Likewise, you're also not trying to drink a glass of wine either, or beer. You don't want to have a huge pasta meal in particular, or any big meal prior to speaking, because all of the oxygen that you need in your brain to think is going to be in your stomach, trying to digest your food. So you want to be mindful of how you eat prior to a presentation, regardless of how big or small, especially if you're going to be standing. That's part of the reason why, the pandemic has caused lots of us to not be as physically active, and it takes a lot of intention to be physically active. But when you're giving a presentation, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be standing. And so, after you've eaten a meal, you don't want to stand, you want to sit. You might want to lay down. Be mindful of the food intake and the drink intake prior to. You want to get comfortable with audience members before starting your presentation. And I think that's where we left off, where we started to talk about being on time versus being before time. Kelvin was telling us about his vision of having servants who will be setting up everything. So all he has to do is walk in the door. Now for the rest of us, you know, you want to be before time, right? You want to get on, you want to come in before time. Just like when I come into class a little bit before time, some of you are already here. So, you know, I say good morning and how are you? I'm able to chat. Chris and I had a nice little chat before that. Some of you came in and you heard the chat and you chimed in, and it just makes everything nice. And it's just like, you know, I actually like being here. I like getting on for this class. I like, you know, she's cool. Or at least I try to be for the most part. But, you know, it's nice because it makes people feel comfortable and want to be and want to hear what you have to say and want to be a part. And so that's what you want in your audience, because you're prepping them to listen, to be able to hear you and listen. You know, Kelvin's version of coming to America, it's great when you can just walk in the door, but you know, discipline is good too, and being able to be ahead, being before time will help you to connect with people, and you never know how far that will go and where that might take you. During your presentation, you know, focus on the people. Make people the subject of your sentences. Have you all noticed how I use some of the names of people in the classroom on the quizzes? I do that on purpose. That's very intentional. It's a way for you to know that I see you, quote unquote, right? I see when you're here. I see when you're not here. I was going to shout somebody out, but I'm not going to do that. I'll shout you out after class. So you make people the subject of your sentences, especially if they have badges on, because sometimes they'll have badges on, especially as the world begins to open back up. You will probably do a combination of, again, online presentations as well as in-person presentations, and people will have badges on. So you use their name. And again, it makes them feel, you know, sometimes for some people, it's going to make them feel on the spot, right? But it also says something to them about you, that you're paying attention, that you see them, that you notice them, right? And sometimes it's a way to get those people who, you know, they always chatting, right? During the presentation, it might be a way, oh yeah, so-and-so. And so, you know, it brings them back into focus and paying attention. Do it if it's appropriate. If it's seemingly inappropriate, you can always ask someone before the presentation, you know, I'm going to use people's names. Is that okay? Do people, you know, and you might even say to the audience, I'm going to call your names out. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just like to use audience members' names, and, you know, and most people will let you know if they're like completely uncomfortable, but most people are not completely uncomfortable. So this is reiterating what I've said before. Arrive early, not on time, but before time. So I'm gonna keep moving. Focus on the needs of your audience. Sometimes people need a break. And if you've got a workshop that's an hour or perhaps an hour and a half long, you might need to schedule a 5-minute or 10-minute break. If it looks like people are having a difficult time, like they didn't have their coffee this morning, or like Chris, they woke up 10 minutes before class, you know, watch the body language, right? The nonverbal communication, and kind of assess where people are. And if you just need, or perhaps sometimes maybe not a break, but maybe you end up ending early, right? To give people what they need. When you lose your place in your presentation, don't panic, right? You want to pause. Sometimes I start saying things and I go, I just lost my train of thought. I forgot where I was going to go with that. I'll ask people, because I'm comfortable enough, I'm like, what was I saying? And somebody will automatically chime in or say something. And I'm like, thank you. And then I keep going. And most people will chuckle because it happens to everyone, right? So you don't have to completely like turn red or freeze or like try to go invisible. That won't work anyway. Just pause for a moment. And if it's not coming, like, what was I saying? Turn to somebody. Look at, what was I saying? I was saying something and I just lost my train of thought. that quick. And people, like I said, they'll enjoy that. They'll chuckle at that because it's very human and we all have done it. One of the things, though, that you don't want to say or you don't want to do is you don't want to disqualify yourself. Never tell your audience, things haven't gone as expected. My PowerPoint's not working. If your PowerPoint stops working, you should have a set of notes or a copy of your PowerPoint where you can still deliver your presentation even without the visual up so that other people can see it. Okay. But don't disqualify yourself. I couldn't get it. I ain't have time. Because don't nobody want to hear that. No one wants to hear that. No one's interested in that. Your stakeholders won't be interested in that. It doesn't mean that people are not understandable, but during a presentation is not the time to talk about woe is me and all the challenges of life. Okay.
You can say things were better than I expected.
Well, I mean, the point is you don't want to take away from your credibility. That's why I'm saying don't disqualify yourself. Because as soon as you start saying all of these different things, it kind of makes it seem like you're not up to the task or that you can't handle it. Remember, at the beginning of the course, I said everything comes back to credibility. So by saying not to disqualify yourself or telling your audience things haven't gone as expected, you're taking away from your credibility. And I don't want you to do that. Okay. Always have a plan B. Usually when I have a presentation, especially when we were doing them in person, I'd have it in two different places. I'd have it on the device I was using, and I'd also have a copy of it on a USB, or I might have an emailed copy. I would have emailed a copy of it to myself. So that way, if my machine decided it wasn't going to cooperate, I could use their machine, or I could at least talk from my notes. But I wouldn't be stuck with nothing because of a tech glitch. Know what your key messages are. If you're able to talk about what your key messages are, even if you're not able to read your presentation verbatim, you can talk about it because you know what it is that you're doing and where you're going. So for example, you've been with me, we've been together now for several weeks. You hear me, you see that I have notes, I have PowerPoints, right? But you see that I'm not married to the PowerPoint. I can talk to you without this, right? Because I know I can talk off the PowerPoint. You want to have an idea of the plans and even examples. Sometimes I don't keep track of my examples like I should, but you want to be able to talk about whatever your key messages are, because then you're never stuck, right? And there's never ever this sort of uncomfortable lull because you don't remember what's next. I think I talked about this already, but you want to use the room to your advantage. So you want to move around so that people can see you easily, regardless of where they're sitting. Sometimes people will be sitting in rows. Sometimes they'll be sitting at a long board meeting table, or perhaps even individual circle tables. And you can move around as you're comfortable in order to connect with different people in the audience, and to allow people to see you, but avoid, being distracting. You don't want to look like you are, what is those things? Those whack-a-mole games where you pop up here, then you pop up there, then you pop up here, you pop up there. The goal is not to be a whack-a-mole where you're popping up all over the place, but to, take your time and, move around in a way that helps to hold people's attention and keep them engaged. That's why you can't eat too much. You want to use your podium and your table strategically. Podiums usually will have, or lectern will have, possibly a mic attached to it, but it's usually that stand that has a slope on it that enables people to rest any material, any written material, or anything that they may have on top, and then they can look at that and refer to their notes Again, a mic might be attached. It can be at the front of the room. But you don't want to, if there's a podium there, you don't want to stay behind the podium the entire time. You might want to come from behind the podium ever so slightly. As that, again, it will help people to be engaged and see you. And the same thing with tables. Sometimes there'll be a table, there might not be a podium, it'll just be a table. You know, again, use your table and your podium strategically, not as a crutch or to hide behind. So this is the soften model of nonverbal communication. Your book goes into a lot more detail about this, but you know the word soften. S stands for smile. O stands for open stance. F stands for forward lean. T stands for tone. E stands for eye contact. N stands for nod. So when you are presenting, especially when we get back in person, but even when you're doing it online too, if you smile, if you're, you know, standing, this will help you also be engaged. Your body is important, is an important part of the presentation, and you need to be engaged. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. That's because I've been up since 2:30. But yeah, so, you know, you need to be engaged. Your body needs to be engaged. And this helps for that. This helps you to be engaged. It helps for people to engage with you. And these are aspects of nonverbal communication that help and demonstrate, you know, openness to your audience. So you've got several acronyms. You see two of them here. Let me just go and circle. You remember AIM, right? Soften. There was another one. PREP, right? These are all acronyms that really can help you streamline your preparation for a presentation. Dress for success. Okay. Formal business attire, formal business dress is intended to project executive presence and seriousness. Sometimes nowadays you might hear people say boss, right? When they really mean boss. Right? That's what they're trying to show, right? Executive presence, seriousness, no game. Business casual dress is nice. A lot of companies have moved toward this kind of dress, except for in certain situations where they're doing this, right? And there's nothing wrong with business casual dress, okay? Oftentimes, colleges and universities will do this on Fridays. Businesses will do this on Fridays, and definitely during the summer. However, and then there's casual dress. Of course, this is the least formal option, and you rarely will see it in a business setting unless it's like a Saturday or Sunday and somebody's literally running in to grab something and they're heading back out. You always want to do formal business dress unless otherwise instructed. Okay? You always want to be.
In order to gain authority, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's about the credibility at this point, and you really want to make sure that that's clear. Here goes a chart from your text, and you can see that the more formal the business attire is, the more authoritative, and the least more casual, people assume is more friendly. Okay. Dress is considered a form of nonverbal communication. And when you dress very casually, you are saying that I'm friendly. I'm cool. I'm, no big deal. I'm not serious. And doesn't mean that you can't be serious, but again, when you're doing a presentation, you don't want to project, I'm just cool and laid back. You want to present yourself as competent, caring, and what's the other C? What's the other C? Competent, caring. I should call on somebody.
Creative, I think.
I'm thinking about it.
Wait.
Oh, that's not good. Let me see. Who?
Is it candor?
What?
Is it character?
Thank you. Who said character?
Tiana.
Thank you, Miss Tiana. The rest of y'all should be ashamed of y'allself. What is this? How many weeks we into the class and y'all still can't recite the three components of credibility? Come on. I'm gonna need y'all to do better. Okay? Your credibility, part of who you are, part of your credibility is wrapped up in your dress, because it is a form of nonverbal communication. They're going to be looking at that and making a decision about your character, how competent they think you are, and if you even care. Okay. The other thing, and this is part of the reason why I'm having you all go and evaluate some corporate presentation. Again, it doesn't have to be an hour long. It could be 20 minutes. The goal is you want to see how they utilize, how they communicate, how they use visuals or not, right? You want to avoid turning out the lights. Why do you want to avoid turning out the lights? I've done this. Big mistake. Why do you want to avoid turning out the lights?
It makes you get sleepy.
Thank you. That's it. People gonna start. It's just natural, especially right now with everything that's going on, and everybody's dealing with something, right? Everybody's dealing with something, and folks are tired. You turn out the lights, natural response. Your body just wants to relax. Okay, so never turn out the lights. On occasion, you might turn out one light, especially if it's going to help you to see the PowerPoint or your visual a little bit better, but don't turn out all the lights, because you will have people closing their eyes. Okay. Speak to your audience, not the screen. You can motion or point up at the screen or gesture toward the screen, but still keep your eyes, your face, and your body open so that your audience can see you. Okay. And then you don't want to read your slides verbatim. I mean, it's okay to read off of them, but you should be able to, it can be an outline, but you should be able to talk and say more about what it is that you're showing than just what's on the screen. Okay. So sort of just what I do here in class. I might read something that's on the screen, but I'm not married to it where I can't say more about it. That's what helps to make the lecture a little bit more engaging, because I know how to come off. If all I did was read the slides, this would be extremely boring, even for an hour, right? So you think about that in terms of your presentation. You don't want your presentation to be just you reading your slides. Preview the slides before you show them. I've made this mistake several times. Okay. And it's something that I hate it. When I make a mistake like that, I have a misspelled word, it bothers me to no end. And so it forces me to be a little bit better in my preparation so that I can catch even the smallest error. Okay, so preview your slides before showing them. This is part of your rehearsal. You're supposed to rehearse. And I know and part of it is in an ideal world, right? And not that everything is ideal, but you're really supposed to rehearse. You should go through it a little bit, once or twice, even if you don't do it like 20 times, you should go through your presentation a few times. So that way you, get more comfortable with the material. You can talk a little bit more off the cuff or off the outline without having to have everything literally scripted out. Let me just double check where we are. Okay. Oh, yep, we're almost there. The other part of it is this. You want people to not to look at your visuals, but you want them to still see you, right? When you can, when it's possible, use a remote control to advance your slides. So that way you can be walking around the room and you can press a button and the slide changes, right? And then of course, this seems very elementary, but you should not be standing in front of the slide projector, right? If those are still around, but most of them now, I think even at BMCC, those are mounted like on the, mounted off the ceiling. In my day, they would be in the middle of the room. And you might still see some places, some older places, facilities that may still have one of those. But you don't want to be standing in front of the projector, even if it's mounted on a ceiling, such that your shadow shows up on the screen and obscures your audience's ability to see what you have there. And when you have a blank slide, use it strategically. Okay, they can be very helpful. They can kind of help the audience reset. They can help you reset and prepare to move on to another topic. If you're going to use handouts, make sure that the handouts, that it makes sense, that it's beneficial, that it has information on it that you really can't project on screen. So, handouts can be helpful. You want to be wise too as to when you distribute your handouts. Those should be done at the end of a presentation so that people don't get caught up in reading your handout and not, again, paying attention to you and your presentation. And again, this allows you to have a little bit more control over the message that you are trying to communicate. It's kind of like you hand out if you give your handouts, then people are thinking about your handout and what's on your handout and not where you are in your presentation. And that might be something that you're going to say that's going to make what's in the handout that much more clear. But if you give it out before you get to that point, you're going to have people jumping all around and it can kind of make things a little bit more difficult. So, when you hold on to your handouts and you wait till you distribute them, it helps you to communicate the messages that you are intending to communicate in the time and in the time frame that you're trying to communicate them in, without feeling like rushed or having things get out of hand, or as y'all say, out of pocket. One of the things that I think is beneficial and helpful is that if you you interact with your audience, as I've already said before, but you might want to field questions. You might even want to have a crosstalk or you have them talk to your neighbor about something. These are great because it gives you an opportunity, gives your audience an opportunity to interact with one another, but it also gives you an opportunity to kind of walk around and kind of see what's going on with people. And then you may have the opportunity. I'm sorry? Can you repeat that? Okay, I'm assuming that was not important. You may even have the opportunity to follow up with an audience member or audience members afterwards, right? And have a really good conversation. Again, these are things that build your credibility, caring, character, What's the third? What's the other C? This is a different one now. What's the other?
Competence.
Thank you. Competence. And even interacting with your audience is going to increase your credibility. Okay. So when you're fielding questions, pause before answering, think about it, reflect, be honest. That was the long discussion that we had on Wednesday. Be honest. If you don't know, you don't know. And you don't know, not knowing can actually increase your credibility. You want to show appreciation. If somebody goes, oh, I know about that, and they share, thank you so much for, providing us with an answer, or, but you want to show appreciation to the people who've committed some amount of time to come and hear your presentation, even if they had to be there, right? Be concise. We all are in a space where we're still dealing with the impact of the coronavirus, and we want to utilize time wisely, effectively. So when you're doing a presentation, you want to be mindful of how you're speaking, and you want to say things as succinctly as possible. That's a great word, succinctly. It is a synonym for the word concise. So you're also going to reframe the question sometimes to match your agenda. We all know that we've been in classes or perhaps presentations where people ask questions that don't seem quite related to what's being said. And one way to help steer people right back into where they need to be and the focus is to reframe their question to match the goal or the focal point of the moment. That is also too a respectful way. It doesn't make people feel like, you're shouting them out. Now, on occasion, you will present in teams, okay? And this needs to be, this is where people, the people need to know their roles and be clear about, who's doing what. You can't wing a team presentation. So you want to be clear, right, about your objectives and your messages, right? Your key messages. You're going to decide on who's going to do what, who's going to do the opening, who's going to do point 1, who's going to do point 2, who's going to do point 3, and who's going to do the close. You want to stand together and present a united front. So while each person is presenting, you want to be with them, standing and or sitting next to them. In order to make sure that there is a connectedness and that you just did not listen to 5 different presentations, is that, 5 people, each person could refer to the other person's point. So let me just give you a visual of this. And I'm just gonna, let's say we had 5 people. Is that 6? Okay, I can count. I can count. So let's say we had Naomi. Let's say we had Joshua G. Let's say we had Ilya. Let's say we had Eric. And let's say we had Ashley. If they're all presenting, right? We'll do A, B, C, D, E. Naomi does the introduction. Joshua comes up. Joshua refers to something that Naomi said to tie it in. Then Ilya gets up and he refers to something Joshua said. And then Eric gets up and he refers to something Ilya said. And then Ashley gets up to close it all out, and she refers to something that either Eric said or that Eric, Ilya, Joshua, and Naomi said. And now you've heard a presentation, one presentation delivered by a group, but because they were able to connect a point, then it will feel and seem a lot more seamless than listening to 5 separate presentations. Does that make sense?
So there's kind of a chain, right? There's a chain of communication.
Right. Right. I just drew it visually, but the idea is that in your speaking, as you transition, as Naomi transitions, she's going to open the door for Joshua to come up and say his thing. And she's not going to say, and here's Joshua, but the point may be something about product sales. One of the last things Naomi might say may have to do with increasing sales. And then Joshua stands up or steps forward and he starts talking about sales. And then he says something that opens the door for the point that Ilya is going to cover. And that each one is linked such that the audience has heard one presentation delivered by a group or a team, but they've connected it. That's when you've got a team, right? That they've connected it such that the audience is like, oh, wow, that was a really great presentation. The team did a really awesome job. Not that, oh, Eric really knew his point and, so-and-so didn't seem to know their stuff really too well. But you want to link, so that the presentation, so that the team is strong. So I'm just trying to give you a visual of what that might look like. Rhetorically, you would just be sitting down, and as you all work together, you would each kind of think about something that you could say that opens the door to the next person. You refer to one another, so that's referring to one another's points, that's standing together and presenting a united front. And that's also planning for your transition, right? And into each portion of, point A, point B, point C, point D, that each person, the transition becomes seamless and it allows for the next person to go. And so in that way it's done well. Now, if it's not your group's turn to present, don't sit and look salty in the audience. Be a supportive audience member, right? Take the role of an audience member seriously. Don't distract the presenter. Don't be the person that's always talking and chatting, right? And being disruptive such that the people keep stopping and looking at you, right? Make comments, ask questions that help the presenter or presenters stay on task, right? Stay on their message. It can be challenging to do a presentation. Most presentations, you're going to share your professional interests as the presenter, right? And the success of any presentation is a team effort. And that's the thing to remember, that when you are presenting as a team, when the presentation goes well, it is the result of a team effort. Because in all honesty, presenting as a team, while I know a lot of people think they can do bad all by themselves, they can do a good job alone, it's a much different effect when you work with others. So looks like we might be ending a little bit early today. We'll see. Here are the takeaways, right? Here are the things that we've covered and that you just really need to keep in mind as you continue to reflect on what it means to deliver a presentation in a business context effectively. Your delivery, just like your planning of your presentation, impacts your credibility, okay? It shows that you are, if it's done well, it shows that you are competent, that you care, and that you have character. Delivering your presentation with authenticity and confidence and influence. The more you know your material, the more that you're able to practice it prior to having delivered to delivering it, the more confident you will be in it, and you'll be able to move through any nervousness that you might have. Remember the softened model of nonverbal communication, especially if you're one of those people who is not comfortable with their body or how they stand. This can help you kind of navigate what to do with your hands and your feet and you just how you should be in a presentation. It is always a good idea to use some slides. You don't have to have 50 slides, but to have a few that help to illustrate your point or some points that you have. And on occasion, it may be also wise to have a handout. Okay. And so these are things that you need to think about because they require preparation, right? And planning, as you may have seen in the text so far. You want to remember that interacting with your audience is something that's extremely important and also increases and influences for the better your credibility. Okay. So interact with your audience. It's beneficial. You can field questions. You can, you want to greet them if possible. You want to mingle after the presentation. These are all great things to do. When possible, present with a team. It feels better when, you divide up the work and you don't have to do all of the pieces by yourself. And then when you are not standing in front, remember to be a supportive audience member.